Ladies, what's the weirdest fetish a guy has dropped on you all of a sudden with little to no warning? Were you with it or against it? Scat. A guy wanted to watch me take a speep. Cool. Pull up a seat and try to figure out if I've met my recommended daily allowance of fiber. But during he asked if he could get a plate. A plate for me to speep on, instead of in the toilet. I'm very open-minded, but had to decline. He was cute, but not speep on a plate cute. This will probably be buried, but a guy I met on a dating app just started choking me. Hard and with no warning. In the middle of sex. Decided during sex with no pre-discussion or safe word was the appropriate time to tell me that he liked choking girls until they were unconscious. He liked them waking up not knowing what's going on. Being beeped really hard. Needless to say, this was horrifying. I was not okay with it. And he ruined sexual choking for me entirely. Which I used to like, not as hard as that or to the point of passing out though. Huge bummer all around. Would not recommend this strategy if you want this from a sexual partner. I had a guy ask me to bite his dick as hard as I could. All I could imagine were the headlines of me biting it off. I dated a guy who was super into biting me really hard, like it was painful. Not just during sex, but randomly. I asked him to stop and he did not. So I should have just left. He would even admire the bruises he left. Sort of a sick beep and sort of just an asshole. Anywho. One day I bit his dick. He did not love that. __/. Somehow not a deal breaker though. Glad it didn't last. He was a creep. There's an OkCupid question about how wild you'll get. And I'm convinced that 99.9% of the people that say they'll try anything once have no idea what kind of speep some people do. They should probably read these answers. I met this guy and he was just a fling for a while. I knew he was into anal/kinky stuff and I'll try anything once, but I eventually moved out of state, but we would still talk all the time and Skype. We'd fool around on Skype and send each other dirty pics and we became real comfortable with each other. One day he said he had a confession that when he watched porn his favorite part was the cum shot. I didn't think anything of it, I figured guys were into that. Well, one day on Skype he told me that he liked the taste of his own cum. And that he liked to come in his own mouth. Being completely fascinated by people, I of course asked how that was possible. Did he like shoot it up in the air and catch it? He said, "Want me to show you?" Now I don't think that if we were in the same room I would have been able to handle what was about to happen, but I truly think he had some homosexual tendencies but was too scared to tell anyone. Maybe because he was a police officer. I'm not sure. But he was sweet and a good guy, so I was like, what the hell? You only live once, right? So I said, sure. Knock yourself out. So he proceeds to jerk off, and then right before he comes he completely flips upside down on the couch with his legs in the air and his dick pointed down. Comes. And it drips down into his mouth. It's legitimately the craziest thing I have ever seen, but he told me how happy they made him and how he's always been so nervous about revealing that to anyone. So I was happy to help. He wanted to paint my toenails, then ejaculate on them. I was down as long as I approved the color. He did a great job. Even put little hearts on the big toes and gave me a foot rub. It didn't do much for me sexually. But I got a pedicure and we had fun. Edit. He did wait for the polish to dry first. There was some dirty talk. Though mostly I just wiggled my toes at him. It made him laugh and turned him on. It was fun. I have been dating this man for 2 years that I met on POF. About 6 months in, he told me he had a balloon fetish. He said he had been jacking off with them since he was a teen. And his fantasy was to have actual sex on one. He said he had always been afraid to tell anyone. But he sensed that I would be the type of person who wouldn't run away. At first I was like OMG. But then I was like beep it. What's the harm in trying something new? So he brings out this huge 6-foot-long balloon that he has to blow up with an air pump. The thing is huge. And he tells me he owns a ton of them. All shapes and sizes. At first it was weird trying to straddle that humongous balloon and leaning over it so he could beep me doggy style on it. All the while being terrified that it was going to pop in my face at any given moment. But I got used to it and we do it often. It has popped in my face quite a few times and we both get a good laugh. I figure if it makes him happy then why not? Also, if anybody has any suggestions on new things to try with the balloons, let me know. Yeah, no. This one isn't bad at all. No bestiality. No scat/waterworks. Just different. Seems like it could be fun. You could use bigger balloons as support and such. A dude offered me a few hundred to fart in my mouth on our first date. I did not accept. I mean, farting in his mouth for 500 wouldn't be so hard. The other way round, however. I had been seeing this gal who was shamed sexually for the smallest things by her ex-fiancé. Like the fact that she couldn't hold in squirting. We'd talked extensively about stuff I was into, but she was really cautious given her past experiences. One night I had slept over and in the morning when I woke up I found a pair of her freshly laundered panties strewn over my backpack with a note telling me to take them home with me and I'd receive further instructions via text. Just as it gets to the night before I see her next, I get this long line of texts from her dancing around what she wanted. And then finally she got to the point and said, "You know I have a thing for cum. So I want you to make a video of yourself coming on my panties. Afterwards put them in a Ziploc bag and bring them down tomorrow night with you." I'm thinking, okay. I'm a little weirded out that I'm carrying her panties around, to know why, but I just felt weird about it. But decided I was game. Went to her house the next night and we went out to dinner. After getting back to her place she dropped her pants and proudly showed me she was wearing said panties to dinner. I know it sounds like a really tame thing. And I get that sense of some people like an ownership thing when it comes to sex. But it was something so out of the blue and as kinky as I thought I was. It was something wholly new to me. I can't tell if this was a happy or scary moment for you. Sorry. I left out the all-important whether I was into it or not. I was a bit ambivalent at it at first. But during sex that night when she went into heavy moan detail about wondering if others at the restaurant could smell the scent of ownership and lust on her, well, it like notched it up to goddamn. Okay. Well, make room for another kink because that's just disgustingly perverted and hot. The best part for me though was, and I'm now going to blush and hide after saying this, but to that point I was very self-conscious about how much I came. I mean, it's not like 10 guys work of bouquet cum shots crazy, but I do tend to make a large mess on most occasions. After she embraced it, I found out with other gals that they really dug it. Once had a hookup try to randomly fist me with zero warning. I was not okay with that. My junk hurt for almost a week. That just makes no sense to me that someone would assume it's okay to just go ahead and put your whole fist into someone else's body with no consent. Likes having a girl sit on his face, bare-assed and fart. The smellier the better. Another guy said in order to date him, I'd have to be okay with him pissing on my face. Would find it especially hot if I drank some of it in the process. He asked if he could watch a dog beep me. I declined. That's like the third time I've seen that one. WTF is with that? He had other beeped up things that he brought up that I was a little uncomfortable with. But when he dropped that one, I noped out. Then he begged me to stay and promised to leave his wife for me. I didn't know he was married. This post is making me think that the best way to get out of a relationship is ask the other person to beep a dog. Until you accidentally find someone who is actually into it and get yourself painted into a corner. I went over to his house for the first time and he wanted to go from the first kiss to fisting. He was just awkward and had never had sex before, so he didn't know how to broach the subject. I politely said no and we laughed it off and continued with our date. He turned out to be an overall sweet dude and we're still together. Still haven't let him fist me though. Edit. Wow. Gold. Silver. And 11k upvotes for not getting fisted. Thanks guys. Gotta respect the long game. One night stand. Call me captain. I laughed. He left. Not immensely weird but funny. Hope I didn't give him a complex or something about it. Poor dude. Everyone knows if you do that, you should go with call me Ishmael. And then you gotta go harder and say from hell's heart. I stab at thee. Give her the Moby Dick. Dated this dude about 11 years ago. We'd only been going out for about 2 weeks when he brought up that he wanted me to eat grapes out of his ass. He was a pretty big mama's boy, which was already giving me some red flags, and then to spring that comment on me. I pretty much asked if we could see other people. What? I dated a guy that was into virgin roleplay. He also believed he had a huge enough dick to make anyone bleed, virgin or not. When I didn't bleed after we had some rough sex, I'm totally cool with rough sex, he got pissy. He said I should have bleed because I was tight enough. But I guess he didn't realize that vaginas are super elastic. He was convinced I had cheated on him before we had sex. That was really weird. I'm all for pretending to be a curious virgin. But I can't make my imaginary hymen pop and bleed, dude. I still laugh about it to this day. And not everyone bleeds the first time they have sex anyway. At a party, I had a girl straight up ask me if she could hold my dick while I took a leak. I said why not. Then I got bladder shy and disappointed her. Feels bad, man. My ex had a dog-shaped penis dildo that they bought from Bad Dragon. They had used it on me once and asked if I liked it. I said yes. They then proceeded to tell me in detail graphically that if I liked this, just imagine what a real dog would feel like. That we needed to buy a big breed of dog. Like a Mastiff or a Golden Retriever, so that I could have sex with the dog and they could watch. That it would turn them on so much knowing our family dog was secretly peeping me behind closed doors. I was absolutely horrified. The relationship only lasted 4 months and it still makes me sick thinking about it. That's like 5 peep a dog in this post. WTF, people? Guy told me he likes tall women. Really tall women. Wanted me to dress up and play at being a giantess. We were halfway through our first cup of coffee. Knife stuff. No warning at all. I knew he was kinky and slightly weird, but not like dangerously weird until he was having difficulty reaching orgasm. I said something along the lines of how can I help you finish, and he slides a fake magician's knife out of the nightstand next to him and said he had a stabbing fetish. Wanted me to pretend to be murdered by him. It was a nuclear red flag, but there I was. He's already inside me. So I'm like, whatever. I'll go along with this. He came. I left. The next day my abdomen was totally beat the beep up. Bruises all over my torso and chest from him jamming a stupid plastic knife into me. It opened my eyes to how sexual stabbing scenes are in horror films, as he explained that's where the fetish began. From growing up watching Speep like Halloween. Never again those shudders. I grew up watching horror movies and it gave me a not wanting to be stabbed fetish. Sounds like we have the same fetish. Yeah baby, you make me so hot when you do that. What? Not stab me. HNNNGG. I'm literally just sitting next to you on the couch. I just realized that literally every time in my life that I reached orgasm I was being not stabbed. Not me, but a friend of mine was talking to this guy who said, before we go any further, I need to come clean about something. Please don't think I'm strange. I've got a really weird fetish. Instantly we think it's gonna be something extreme. Maybe involving bodily fluids. I don't want to kink shame, but just something downright gross. He says, I need to be wearing a fleece. Patagonia was his preference. It's like innocent compared to the ones in this thread, but just bizarre. Yeah baby. Take me in your Subaru and tell me about your rock climbing trip. Haha, I was imagining a similar scenario. I feel like I know guys who just haven't realized that this is their fetish. I had a friend who came across a fellow with what he called a consensual procedures fetish. As in, he liked to put on medical gloves and give girls examinations. She said it actually wasn't that bad because he knew so much about the female anatomy he could actually find her clitoris. I've got one. First serious relationship. I already knew he was into goth/alternative girls and big boobs, pretty standard. Then he slowly reveals he's into being dominated, blindfolding, teasing, light choking, and also catgirls and girls with other animal features like cowgirls with 6 boobs. I thought he'd told me everything until one night he tells me his biggest secret is his biggest fetish and nobody knows. He keeps hinting at things and saying stuff like it can only happen at certain times, and I think he's going to say he's into periods or something. Then he reveals he's massively and uncontrollably into pregnant women. Especially tiny girls but with enormous overinflated boobs and bellies. Plus this was stacked on top of the other fetishes. So cue him asking me to tie him up whilst wearing a collar. Huge furry tail and the biggest food baby I could manage. He even asked me if I'd consider inflating myself with air. Nope, out of there. Edit. Just to answer some FAQs. Yes. He was also heavily into anime and all things Japanese to a worrying extent, and yes, he was, I felt, somewhat obsessed with sex/masturbation. It had to be several times a day, else he'd accidentally wake me up at 2 a.m. furiously jacking off. Fetishes I missed out. He also claimed to be an ephebophile, into teenagers or adults that look like teenagers. He wanted to drink my breast milk and tried to get me to take supplements to induce it. He strongly hinted that he was a furry and wanted to be a wolf, but I couldn't get him to fully admit it. No. I am not a big titty goth GF, everyone knew that was his type, but I'm just an average boob vanilla girl. See profile photo. And no, I haven't had any messages from people looking for a big titty goth GF. Actually, when I say I noped out of there, I tried my best to accept it/put up with it/be supportive for 3 years, but he could never compromise. It can only happen at certain times. Considering where this started from, I was expecting this to be like werewolf furry sex play. I'm a dama, so I've seen a ton of weird speep. One guy wanted me to brand him like with a hot iron. A couple of guys were interested in serious damage to their genitalia. One wanted to be held underwater. Needless to say, I don't do things that can cause permanent damage or death. I knew a girl who worked as a professional dama. One of her clients wanted to be tied up, blindfolded with a noose on, and left standing on a chair by her, and then he wanted her to leave the room. This was of course idiotic, so she just tied him up, blindfolded him, and then sat in the room reading a book till the timer was up and she came back in and let him out. However, another girl at the same place was not so smart and the guy ended up choking himself into a coma and eventually dying. It was a somewhat big news story when it happened. Right after I found his stash of dildos under his bed. He asked if he could pee inside me. Edit. Didn't answer the last part of the question. But I was against it. For health reasons and because I wasn't ready for that level of intimacy.